long time.
It's not a lot in legal precedent. There's like hundreds of years of legal precedent.
I don't understand how that's relevant.
Because we're talking about legal precedent.
No,
Why, then, is the precedent on public indecency, not this law, you brought up an entirely different law on public indecency, why is the law on public indecency relevant to this?
because we have multiple laws right here about public indecency and
So
performance in public.
there are
and
multiple laws. I want to know why that's relevant to the interpretation of this law. That they wouldn't be wearing clothes of the opposite gender if they were blind. They're not wearing the clothes because they think they look cool. They're wearing the clothes because they want other people to perceive them as another gender, right? This is what the whole transgender movement is about. This is what all of gender ideology is about.
You just like pulled a switcheroo on me where you asked me what the legal argument would be,
And then I made a
you-
legal
and then you
counter argument.
changed it. What are we doing here? I'm sorry. I don't understand what
Arguing
we're doing
about
here.
a law.
Alrighty. So, how's it going?
I'm all right. How about you?
I'm doing pretty okay. Pretty tired. I'm gonna try and maintain my chill as much as possible. I've had a hair trigger, so I'm giving you a warning. It's not you. It's me.
All right. We were talking about the drag bill, right?
Yes. I didn't know how you wanted to start this. However you want to like go over it. I don't know exactly what your full take on it is.
Sure, yeah. I think that it would be overriding precedent for the Supreme Court to not interpret this, or for the courts in general to not interpret this as a bill banning trans people from public. I think that it would be like it's possible for the courts to like go against what their previous rulings were, but I think it's like pretty clear that this bill, according to the current legal definitions, bans it. So I guess what aspect of the changes of the bill do you think doesn't apply to trans people?
So if I have the bill up right here, it seems like they are pretty clear about this being about drag shows. That seems to both be the intent and the letter of the law. I don't know what language would explicitly only apply to trans people or apply to trans people in any situation that it's not also uh, talking about drag shows. So like
So I agree that it would apply to trans people and drag shows, right? That's not the claim. The claim is just whether you said it didn't apply to trans people at all, and I think it pretty clearly does.
Okay, when you say that, I'm saying okay. This is my full take. When I got into the first fight about this, my argument was that this is not a bill that outlaws the existence of being trans in public, right? This is what the assertion that I've seen at least three people make before I said anything about it. Then, when I finally read the bill, I didn't see anything that illegalized or criminalized being trans in public. Um, and then after looking at everybody's arguments, we would have to see, like you said, it is possible for a Supreme Court or a court to completely go against all precedent um, on this, or if there is precedent for just illegalizing people being able to wear some kind of clothing in public, then like you can share that with me. Um, that's still legal today, mind you, not like obscenity laws from the 50s that have been overturned. Um, so that's yeah.
So if your argument is just that the bill is like unconstitutional, that's plausible. I just don't think that takes away from the fact that the bill is banning trans people from public.
Okay, so that's what that's where the contention is. I don't think that this is explicitly or implicitly banning trans people in public.
Okay, I think it's explicitly doing so. I guess we can just go down the text of the bill, right?
Yeah, I have the bill up right now.
I'll read the full section that's going to be relevant. If you think there's anything else that's relevant, we can go into that too. But the amended section is adult cabaret performance means a performance in a location other than an adult cabaret that features topless dancers, go-go dancers, exotic dancers, strippers, male or female impersonators who provide entertainment that to appeal to a prurient interest, or similar entertainers, regardless of whether or not performed for consideration. Any is there anything else from the bill that you want to bring up that you think is going to be relevant?
I think that the important and operative words here are a performance.
Mm-hmm.
Performance is an operative word. The male or female impersonators who like explicitly, like this wording right here is important, who provide entertainment that appeals to a prurient interest or similar entertainers, is pretty important. Um,
Mm-hmm. These are the
yeah.
exact words I wanted to go over. Perfect. What do you think the legal definition of a performance is?
I looked that up. If you have something besides what I got, when I looked up performance in the legal definition of performance in the Tennessee glossary on their website, it gave me something about exchange of money. So if you have a different
Um,
definition that's legal
so
jargon, then
it's saying doing anything as your promise of a contract, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be an exchange of money. And this bill makes it incredibly clear. It says whether or not performed for consideration. The legal precedent of for consideration is for money, so it's not for money. It's just doing any action.
sure. Can you send me that so I can just get like the exact wording?
The definition of performance or a definition of consideration?
Performance.
Sure,
I
it's
agree with you on the definition of consideration.
yeah. So it's going to be the same thing you were referencing, right? But we can just look
Let
up
me see if I can find that, because when it didn't give me
Tennessee performance definition equal. Cool. Where is it? Where is it? I know that I just had it up. Oh, here we go. Tennessee glossary.
yeah, I'm googling the same thing.
Yeah, I figured that we already had that. I didn't think we'd need to come up with it again. This was easy to find.
Let me look at my history. Sorry about that.
Okay. Performance and here we go. It's act of doing is required. What is required by a contract? Here we go. Here, Cornell. That's Encyclopedia Britannica. In contract law, there must be a consideration for the contract to be enforceable. In some contracts, this means one promise.
Okay, I have dictionary.law.com. I don't know if this will be acceptable for both of us, but let's see. Performance, fulfillment of one's obligations required by a contract. Specific performance of a contract may be demanded in a lawsuit. Performance is a short or full performance spelled out in the contract, but if the contract provided for a series of acts or deliveries with payment for each of the series, there may be partial recovery for what has been performed or delivered, even if there is not full performance.
Exactly. So for the performance to be enforceable, there needs to be a consideration. The bill makes it very clear that it's not for a consideration, right? So just any sort of contract. We know that there are like verbal contracts that are made amongst people that are legally enforceable all the time in civil law, and clearly there's a lot of reference to civil law terms. It's making certain types of business, which is usually regulated by civil law, criminal. So it's making like a criminal statute on the civil idea of just doing a performance, and given that it doesn't necessarily have to be for consideration, it's just any action in a location other than adult cabaret.
Okay, so I think when I'm looking at this, the entertainer is very operative, performance is operative, and
where do you say entertainer?
Oh, sorry, entertainment. Let me get the exact wording here.
Okay, so yeah, who provide entertainment that appeals to a prurient interest.
Yeah. That line that we agreed on was
so
important earlier.
Provide entertainment. I'm sure that you would agree that like that trans people in some circumstances provide entertainment, right?
Sure.
That even just a trans person being in public can be entertaining to people. People that find that funny. That like trans people are like funny to people or entertaining in some way or another. or
And this is where I would ask for any legal precedent where someone simply existing in public was considered an entertaining act.
So yeah, this is gonna happen like over and over again. This is why there are extra things added into like anything that's like an obscenity law, right? It can't just be entertainment for a prurient interest because anything is gonna fall under these really really broad terms. Normally, obscenity is also going to include like uh, not useful to like to social or political interests of the public at all. Or like or not wanted in that area, right? This is but if we look at like pretty much any trial on in the Supreme Court on like what qualifies as like obscenity, they're pretty much going to say that it's the legal definition, the legal standard here is that it is anything that has a tendency to excite the sexual arousal. And obviously, trans people more than the average person are going to have a tendency to cite sexual arousal or fetishize on a very, very large scale. We know that like some of the most searched porn in a lot of states is trans porn. Like trans people are very, very sexualized. There's going to be a tendency for trans people to incite prurient interest.
So again, I would have to see any kind of precedent where someone existing in public, because by that definition, uh, a woman walking around in like a bikini could be appealing to a prurient interest because strippers, someone who's taking off a lot of their clothes or walking around with their, uh, a lot of skin showing would fall under what you're saying. But I don't think
Yeah,
that there's
having a
ever been
tendency to
any
excite lustful
precedent.
thoughts. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
So
the precedent of considering this prurient interest is it's like regular, right? We can look at the original case where like I know it where I see it comes from, and that's gonna have like a very broad definition of like it's gonna be barely classified under the prurient interest of the definition of hardcore pornography, right? But it still is, and I agree. Like a woman in a bikini is gonna be prurient interest, but there's other qualifications to most obscenity laws that this one doesn't have, which is why you never see like these criminalized. But the actual case of that being like prurient interest, that's like regularly found, right? There's just no other qualifications in this law because it's a bad law.
I mean, I agree it's a bad law. That's the thing. I agree this is a stupid, unnecessary law that doesn't actually solve for any social ill that is real in any way outside of the deranged mind of Republican lawmakers. Again, right? You're talking about the you know it when you see it legal precedent. Has there ever
Uh,
been any you know it when you see it precedent that involves someone walking around getting arrested for simply wearing clothes that isn't that is either a trans, b like a woman walking around in a bikini because that does elicit sexual thoughts in men.
so again, I'll say it like a million times, right? Qualifications for prurient interest and other obscenity are different, right? The qualifications for
I'm
obscenity,
sorry, can you say the second one that's different?
obscenity and prurient interest, the one referenced
Okay,
in this
gotcha.
bill, prurient interest. So most other laws that we have for obscenity on the books are going to have a number of other qualifications, right? The other qualifications are going to be things like are going to be things like does it serve a social use? Does it serve a political use? Is there is it welcomed by the people that like own the facility or the community that are at the facility where it's happening? These are the other qualifications that are usually added on top of prurient interest to determine whether it's obscenity. This doesn't have those extra qualifications like every legal precedent that we do have does, right? We do, however, have cases where there's like pretty much every trial that we've ever seen on like what constitutes pornography, what constitutes obscenity, that is gonna involve prurient interest has almost always met the like prurient interest threshold, right? It's like an incredibly wide net because the definition, like I said, is incredibly broad, right? Like, as you pointed out, it's has a tendency to incite lustful thoughts. That's the only definition. Um, this, however, only has that prurient interest clause. It doesn't have all the other clauses like being welcomed by the people in the area, right? That's like that's that's usually the thing that you would have to like defend like a woman walking around in a bikini at a beach.
Okay, I pulled up the full obscenity law. Someone linked it in chat. Um, I'm trying to find specifically which part you're referencing in terms of like obscenity versus prurient interest.
You can look up the Roth test. That's gonna give like the Supreme Court ruling on like what obscenity means.
Okay, I linked that to you. I'll look up Roth test.
Yeah, and to be clear, all these other things are not going to require the extra stuff because they have a more specific definitions for things like means adult oriented performances that are harmful to minors, and also adds and that feature so that's like that's one of the extra qualifications on a prurient interest. In fact, this doesn't even have prurient interest, the link that you just sent. It's not even an obscenity law. It's just adult-oriented performances that are harmful to minors and where they can take place. It's a regulation of that, right? Um,
I'm
it,
sorry, which part are you talking about? Because when I see entertainer here, it gives pretty specific conditions.
yeah, exactly, right. In the link that you just sent, right? It's not
Hmm.
giving it's not giving like prurient interest as the qualifications. It just says it means adult-oriented performances that are harmful to minors. The qualification is harmful to minors, right? This is like a huge step. This is a huge extra qualification from just like it is prurient interest. The current law expands it to a huge number of things by removing that are harmful to minors and adding in the prurient interest.
So just to be ultra clear with what you're saying that the existing
The existing
the
law doesn't
existing
have the
one.
qualification of prurient interest. It has the qualification instead of that are harmful to minors, right? This is a much narrower thing than just has what's it called? The specific wording is appeals to prurient interest, right? That it leads to lustful thoughts. That's an entirely different change from the previous adult cabaret entertainment meaning means adult-oriented performances that are harmful to minors. This is a qualification that's removed in the bill that expands the obscenity law.
Okay, can you link me that because
You
I
linked
don't
it to me.
I linked it to you. Okay, I'm confused where we're looking at here.
Okay,
Sorry,
we'll
because I'm
read.
trying to sorry, I'm just trying to like listen to you and also read, and I can't do both. So I'm like focusing more on listening to you.
Okay, Section A. Section 1, Part A of the bill says
Okay, got you.
means adult-oriented performances that are harmful to minors, as that term is defined in 3917-1901, and that features topless dancers, go-go dancers, exotic dancers, strippers, male or female impersonators, or similar entertainers. That is a much broader definition than the new bill that's being presented. That's said to replace that section and say adult cabaret performance means a performance in a location other than an adult cabaret that features topless dancers, go-go dancers, exotic dancers, strippers, male or female impersonators who provide entertainment that appeals to a prurient interest or similar entertainers, whether or not performed for consideration. They replaced the harmful to minors standard, which is much narrower, and replaced it with a prurient interest standard, which is incredibly broad and just says that it has to incite lustful thoughts, has a tendency to incite lustful thoughts.
And the standard for in your statement is that that is so broad as to include trans people walking down the street.
Yes, that's what the standard is currently legally.
Okay, can you like show me anywhere where that's the standard for what prurient interest is?
Yeah,
Just the
sure.
fact that someone might be sexually attracted to someone walking down the street?
Sure, yeah. The prurient interest, according to the Department of Justice, means a tendency to incite lustful thoughts. I'll send you the Department of Justice definition on this. The term prurient permissibly may be defined as that which incites lasciviousness or lust. Prurient interest. Interest. Where is it? The court has expressively employed the word lustful in determining the term prurient interest. The word could no longer be permissibly be used in defining prurience. The definition of prurient interest in Washington statute is not unconstitutionally overbroad. Oh, this is an argument here. I'll send you the whole precedent.
Please, I was about to start Googling.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's see here.
Here we go. The court defined material appealing to prurient interest as material having a tendency.
How far
to
down are we going
lustful
down?
thoughts.
Sorry.
Just hit Control F. Having a tendency.
Okay, got you. The court in Miller did not define the term prurient interest. Instead, the court gave content to that term by referring to its earlier opinion in Roth v. United States, Supra, and a footnote in Roth. The court discussed at some length the meaning of the term prurient. The court first defined material appealing to a prurient interest as material having a tendency to excite lustful thoughts. The court then observed that dictionary definitions for the term prurient use words such as desire or longing, itching, morbid, or lascivious longings, and lewd that in a prior decision the court had suggested that the prurient means the opposite of wholesome. Finally, the court noted that the model penal code defined the term prurient interest as meaning a shameful or morbid interest in nudity, sex, or excretion, and say that it is perceived no significant difference between the model penal code definition of prurient interest and the definitions that have been developed in the case law. Thus, the Roth court clearly proved lustful as one of the several possible definitions for the term prurient interest.
So yeah, having a tendency to incite lustful thoughts, which is, again, much broader than is harmful to minors, right? Having a clause that says, like, you can't have things that are harmful to minors is probably a good thing.
So I guess, like, what I'm trying to ask is, how could this possibly, under this definition, I feel like anything that gets brought to a court would have to have a standard by which they're going to argue that the person was intentionally trying to incite lustful or prurient thoughts in people.
But the
whether
bill,
or not they were doing it for whether or not they were doing it for payment of any kind, whether or not or anything like that, but there still has to be some kind of
so there's no intent listed. In fact, the only insinuation we have of whether there needs to be intent or not is regardless whether or not performed for consideration. And consideration doesn't just mean payment. Just for like any promise. Consideration means like any promise. So that could include like the promise of like being entertained or like a further appreciation for or something along those lines.
Okay, so how does this apply to trans people in a way that doesn't apply to people who are walking around in like bikinis or who are shirtless or anything like that?
Because they wouldn't be male or female impersonators. In Tennessee, you legally cannot get the sex on your birth certificate changed. That's male or female. You can get your gender changed to man or woman on your driver's license, but your sex is locked in. Your legal sex is locked in. Your male or female is locked in on your birth certificate. So male or female impersonators is only going to be referring to people in drag or trans people.
Okay. I guess like what I'm not connecting here is the thing that's not connecting for me is that by the things that you've sent me and by what we're reading, I'm not seeing how an officer could walk up to a trans person and say that they are engaging in any kind of performance for this sort of thing simply by walking around in like jeans and a t-shirt.
So you might not think that an officer is likely to do it. Again, I said before,
like how could explain to me the legal case that could possibly happen.
Okay, so they pick a trans person off the street, right? Again, whether a cop is likely to enforce this law is a different question. It's a question of like what the law is, right? So if just any random cop in Tennessee happens to decide, I don't want this trans person on the street, and they happen to know about this law, they can arrest this trans person, and they can say, or at least charge them, right? It doesn't provide a standard for a warrant in this bill. I think that the other one does, sure. But whatever. They can charge them, they go to court, and the court says, and at the court, the prosecution says, this trans person was performing an action in public in a location other than an adult cabaret. They were outside in public. It featured a male or female impersonator, somebody who is presenting as a sex other than the one that we were born as, who provide
Sure.
entertainment that appeals to a prurient interest.
Okay, and that's where I'm gonna ask, how could that ever say they're walking down this street in jeans and a t-shirt? How could that ever go further than that?
Well, they're in
By
drag.
what's their
They're
but this right here that appeals to a prurient interest. Does
Yeah,
this
so
not
prurient
imply?
interest is going to be a tendency to incite lustful thoughts, right? Trans people, more than the average person, they have a tendency to incite lustful thoughts. By being in drag, by virtue of being in drag, they have a tendency to incite lustful thoughts.
Okay, is there any case law or precedent or anything that would like have that hold up?
The one that I just sent you, the one that defines prurient interest.
They would have to make this case to a
Jury,
to
and
a
then
jury.
a jury in Tennessee. And then if it made it at all to higher courts, if higher courts got a hold of it at all, it could make its way to the Supreme
let's talk
Court,
about
and the Supreme Court is rather
really quick. I just want to ask about the 12 jurors, right? They're in the courtroom and they're making the argument that they're appealing to people's sexual interests, just making people lustful as they walk down the street in their fucking Iron Maiden shirt and ripped fucking, like, they have a hole in their jeans, all right? Now we have to have people say that that was a lustful display.
I'm sorry, the fact that you're gonna get a jury to say that that somebody in like a t-shirt and jeans is a lustful display.
Yes, that's
You-
where I'm like drawing the contention. I
So
guess right here.
so yeah, I don't think that it's guaranteed that a jury is going to interpret the law as it's not guaranteed that a jury is going to interpret the law as the current precedent suggests. But if the jury were following the law as it is, then yes. Also, if it's Tennessee, right? Tennessee is like deep red. The bias
Can I
there.
ask one quick question because I
Yeah.
agree there might be like bias against trans people in Tennessee, in like the general population, right?
Hmm.
This definition that you sent me,
Hmm.
the definition itself isn't. I'm not a legal person, okay? This is why I'm asking. The the precedent does the precedent imply that anything that could possibly turn someone on ever could fall under this definition,
I
or is it what, like you said earlier, you know it when you see it?
So the I know it when I see it is specifically for hardcore pornography, right? I know it when I see it is does not apply to prurient interest in particular.
Okay, sorry, I must have misunderstood the connection there. Okay,
Yeah.
so this
It
having
was
a
just
tendency to excite-
that's the landmark case was why I brought it up. Is that was
Okay.
like a famous case, and that's the main thing that people took away from the case is that hardcore pornography is defined as I know it when I see it. That's one case in which the definition of prurient interest was like hashed out.
Okay, sorry, I thought that you were basing your argument like solely on that. Closed out that tab. All right, because I'm trying to understand like fully, not trying to be pedantic or anything.
Hmm.
Itching morbid or lascivious longings and lewd. In that prior decision, the court had suggested that prurient means the opposite of wholesome. Okay, I don't know. I fail to see, I guess, how any prosecutor could make a reasonable case that could ever put someone in jail based off of this definition of prurient interest, based off of this bill, that would make it to where people walking down the street in like jeans and a t-shirt would ever be found guilty based like solely off of the fact that they're trans.
I mean, I again, you might you I don't understand what the problem with the argument is here, right? So the tendency, it's not going to be like has any chance to, right? Anybody has any chance to be turned on by anything. The question is whether it has a tendency to incite prurient interest. If you think that somebody who's in like who's like stripping, right? And they're presenting femininely because they're like a woman who's presenting femininely. This has a tendency to incite prurient interest. Presumably, this is because it is more likely to incite prurient interest than a normal person in public, right? Than like an average person in average clothing. Trans people, we know, are regularly fetishized. We can see them in porn all the time. And then we can see that trans porn is growing in one of the top categories in many southern states. And we know that this prurient, this tendency to incite lustful thoughts is more common amongst trans people than the average person, right? I don't see what the symmetry breaker is.
I guess for me to accept that someone walking down the street and being trans, for me to accept that being made illegal by this bill, I would have to see any kind of case law where where someone walking down the street in like regular street clothes in any state in any um under any law that made it to where they oh, thank you for the raid, Chud. I would have to see someone walking down the street getting convicted by a court in street clothes. That's what I would have to see for me to accept that. For there to be some sort of case law where uh, this definition of someone walking down the street and they're creating lustful thoughts, and it's simply like jeans and a t-shirt type stuff.
Okay, so
Because
again,
uh, because this is my understanding of how the legal system works. In order for there to be a conviction and for it to hold up in the courts, there has to be either a Supreme Court ruling or precedent off of that ruling. This
well,
ruling that you, this
no,
definition that you sent me, oh
it,
no,
it doesn't have to be necessarily Supreme Court ruling. The Supreme Court can't
or
set
a lower
every
court. Sorry.
or a lower court, yeah. And if there's no precedent, right, then a lower court will make the precedent.
Okay, and just trying to understand this this link that you sent me, the Brockett versus Spokane is that, am I reading that right?
Are you talking about the
Justice.gov. Yeah.
yeah
Okay.
on the
Has
definition of
this
prurient interest?
Yes. Has that argument ever been used in any context legally to include people in street clothing?
So yes, we do have like old cross-dressing laws that are on the street, right? Just like people cross-dressing in street clothing. Originally, those laws were used to like really strictly enforce gender norms. The the constitutionality of those laws being just based on things like that been like revoked. And the
1 second. There's like background noise that's making it hard to understand you.
in my background,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what to do about that right now. I can get close to the mic.
Yes, exactly what I need you to do. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah.
Say that whole thing again. Sorry.
So yeah, we do have like precedent on people in street clothing and like old cross-dressing laws, right? The the thing with the prurient interest again. The how do I say this? The the ban is not unconstitutional in free speech so long as there's like other qualifications for the prurient interest, as there is with like almost every other obscenity law. In this case, it clearly doesn't seem to be the case. General bans on cross-dressing have already been like determined unconstitutional, right? I'm like I said, if you want to say that this bill is unconstitutional, by all means. I would like to say though that like things being previously ruled unconstitutional is a risky game to be playing with our current Supreme Court that doesn't seem to respect like judicial restraint or precedent or any of that very much over their like political agenda, and we know that they take like donations from billionaires and whatnot. But beyond that, right?
I don't know
If you want to say it's unconstitutional, that's fine. But the text of the bill still is like akin to that of just like a cross-dressing ban, right? They're doing any action which could be like remotely determined as just like by being trans, right? By virtue of like being trans. If you have a trans woman in like a trad wife dress in public, right? This is can easily be argued to like spur prurient interest.
I don't know if I feel like easily is doing a lot of work there. I guess like at the end of the day, like
So what's the
what
symmetry breaker between
can you
between
explain symmetry breaker? I don't know all the
oh
like not as like a denigrating term, but I don't know like the extreme like debate bro or like philosophy terms. So I just
yeah,
don't know
it's
what
like
that is.
it's just like a basic logic term that means like what's the difference if this argument is valid, what makes like another argument not valid? It's like a companions and guilt type argument, right? So like what makes this different? What's the symmetry breaker between somebody who's like let's say who's doing like what's it called like a cabaret performance where they never like actually like strip or like beyond wearing like lingerie that like covers all their parts or whatever that's like but has like a I don't know like a low cleavage like lingerie or something like that versus somebody who's like let's say they're wearing like jeans and a crop top and they're in public, right? Both of these are going to like incite prurient interest. Both of these are going to be like more likely to incite lustful thoughts than the average. And it does include that it's like male or female impersonators, right? So it's only going to be applying to like trans people who are inciting prurient interest. What's the difference in this situation?
Um, Sorry, I was also reading at the same time. You're asking what is the difference between the wording of this law and the wording of previous
No,
cross-dressing laws?
I'll make it like incredibly clear.
Yeah, sorry, I distracted by the fact that I got rated and also reading and also trying to listen to you.
So
I
there's
took my ADD medicine like 2 minutes before you jumped on. So
all good. There are two
yeah,
situations, right? You have one that's like a cabaret performance with like
sure,
let's make it super simple. Like a woman in a trad wife dress that's got like a low cut or something like that, and she's
yep,
doing like a sexy performance, right? And this is obviously meant to like inspire lustful thoughts. And a trans person in public who who is wearing like a crop top or say something like that. Just like jeans and a crop top and like a very
mm-hmm.
very simple outfit. What's the symmetry breaker in terms of like of like how it would be different in this law? Like what's the relevant difference to how it's defining prurient interest?
Um, for for me, I guess the intent and the letter of the law, the letter of the law. Perhaps let me think about this because I'm trying to read it and apply all the different definitions. So a performance, this is something that is an action for some kind of exchange, but it doesn't have to be any kind of exchange um, for because of the consideration aspect of this, right?
Mhm.
So
I agree, it's a shit law. It's like terribly written. It's like somebody like some intern wrote this without understanding the law very well. It seems, which is why it seems to apply to trans people. Um,
okay, and what did we say the definition of entertainment was? Because I'm trying to think of the the way that this could possibly be applied in a way that could ever be upheld.
I mean, we can.
And it's like that's like the big deciding thing for me. Damn,
Here,
I didn't even
let's
think of
look up
that
if
now.
there's a legal definition of entertainment, right? I think that the definition, no matter what, is like probably going to be pretty broad, right? I can't imagine a definition of entertainment that's going to not apply to trans people. But Entertainment law definition. Uh,
I'm on dictionary.law.com. I type in entertainment in legal term and get nothing. So there's no legal term for entertainment. For definitions, I get blue laws and lewd and lascivious. We can look through those super quick. Also, for the Raiders, sorry if we're uh, like going through extreme like definition back and forth, but every word is important. So
so in here, entertainment, the action just is just like the Oxford definition. We know that like just like the thing that you sent, court definitions are gonna be based on what was like what's the popular understanding and what was the intent of the lawmakers, both of which are gonna have you're gonna be able to get like strong inferences from a dictionary definition. The top definition is the action of providing or being provided with amusement or enjoyment.
that's just like the Oxford Dictionary definition.
Yeah. If you can find a legal definition, I don't think there is one. I think that that one's like that's like pretty broad. And it's it's meant to be pretty broad. It doesn't seem like
providing
there's
or being provided with amusement or enjoyment, event of performance or activity designed to entertain others, action of receiving a guest or guest and providing. Yeah, I like the combination of all of these words. I understand why the argument.
Um, so it seems like there's a few. This one clearly isn't what we're talking about, right? Entertainment generally means the attendance by you or your hosts or guests at a meal, sporting event, theater production, or a comparable event, and also might include travel to or accommodation expenses at a conference or an out-of-town event. This is a law that's not going to be relevant. If you want to use that definition, we can, because I think
Yeah, every definition you're gonna have to like send it to me so I can also read it, just so I can make sure that I'm like fully comprehending everything.
here I found a law insider page.
Thank you. This is a bizarre argument. The argument is this: that there is a bill that was has it been passed yet, or is it still on the governor's desk?
I don't believe it's been signed yet.
Yeah, I believe it's on the governor's desk. That my position is that this isn't illegalizing the act of being trans in public. Phenomics says that it is. I got into an argument with a TYT host over this. It's a whole thing. Okay, let me see this.
Mm-hmm. Here's another legal definition. Means the provision of food, beverages, tobacco, accommodation, amusement, keyword, recreation, or hospitality of any kind by a registered person, whether directly or indirectly to any person in connection with a taxable activity carried by the registered person.
With a taxable activity.
Yeah, which would mean like money exchanges, right? But this definition again explicitly the law explicitly excludes that it has to be performed for consideration.
With or without consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So like based off of the definition of entertainment, I don't think that you can just arrest someone walking down the street.
Does somebody walking down the street can they provide amusement?
The provision of.
Yeah, what do you think that means?
Well, let's look up what the legal definition is. Know your customer information.
Yeah. So providing or supplying.
Jeez, every single fucking word in every one of these definitions has more definitions. God fucking damn, I'm so glad I didn't go to law school.
The legal definition of providing seems to just be like provision seems to be just like to provide. This one seems to be like pretty self-explanatory that you are providing it, right? Somebody walking down the street who's like of a sexual nature, right? Or sorry, we'll say it like this, who's like trans, and so they're more likely to incite lustful thoughts. Is going to be providing some sort of amusement to the people who want to be or who are like experiencing the lustful thoughts from seeing the trans person in the crop top.
But even by that definition, the amusement is the same. It's synonymous legally with entertainment. So cut that one out. And where does it? Where
What do
does
you
it
mean
leave
that
us?
the definition is synonymous
Hover
legally
your
with
mouse.
entertainment?
Hover your mouse over amusement.
Okay.
It says means the same as entertainment.
Where does it say
It's
that?
circular. In the definition that you just read, entertainment
Oh,
means the
amusement
provision
the
of
same.
food. Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, in other words, it's saying with the fact that it's including amusement in that definition means that it's relying on an
Meaning all
intuition
the other
about
things.
it's like, well, no, it's providing.
I think that
Well, it's not going to be redundant, right? Why
the
would
reason that they're adding that because people might use amusement and entertainment interchangeably, right?
in that case, why wouldn't they just have the legal definition of amusement like they do here, as opposed to having the
Well, they do have the definition of amusement. It's the same as entertainment.
right, exactly. So it's redundant if you have that definition to include amusement in the definition of entertainment, right?
Yeah, that's why.
We can
why I was
just
saying.
if
And you
that's
disagree, you
if it,
disagreed with me when I said that.
I was looking at the wrong word.
Sorry.
Recreation. So if you don't want amusement because it's referencing entertainment, we can say recreation, right? Recreation is also gonna be followed by the same thing. They're being provided recreation by being able to have the lustful thoughts about the trans person in the crop top.
I feel like this is a huge stretch to say that someone.
So I mean it's a huge stretch to say that they're including
let's say
amusement as like a redundancy, as when amusement is already defined as entertainment.
Why is that a stretch when it literally says it right in front of us?
So because there are multiple legal definitions for all of these words, right? Even if we pull up amusement, right? The definition of amusement that's being used in entertainment, if you have a circular definition, this isn't going to like be useful. It means that you're getting at either a semantic crime or it's a bad definition, right? Since it's legal, it has to be basically a semantic crime. So there has to be some sort of intuition about like entertainment means amusement and amusement means entertainment. And we have to get like at what our intuition about amusement means. I think we all know that sexual arousal is going to be part of amusement, right? The definition that you're trying to use, if we're not going to like if recreation doesn't apply to like the person walking down the street, again, I don't see how this is different than like the like an actually sexual drag show, right? Like if somebody's like stripping for a drag show and like their tits pop out or whatever, right? That's
Okay,
like that has to fall under this definition.
Under existing obscenity laws in the United States, would a woman in lingerie and a thong be considered doing something obscene?
It's more complicated than that. It depends on where they're doing it. It depends on the culture of the place doing it.
Let's say they're walking down the street on a Tuesday.
I think it's probably going to depend on the like the type of lingerie, and it's going to depend on the interpretation of a jury.
You can see the nipples through it, and it's a thong.
Oh, in that case, it's just public indecency. Yeah.
Okay.
In most places, some places have like quote unquote free the nipple laws or whatever.
Okay. Now, so you can't see the nipples.
So if you can't see the nipples,
it becomes incredibly complicated.
Yeah, it's basically gonna be like up to a jury, right? If they're in like lingerie walking in public like that.
Okay, well, it seems like that's my argument here then.
So your argument is that it's like up to a jury?
Well,
I don't know.
I'm asking you, does that not make sense whatsoever for this to criminalize trans people walking around in street clothes? Would have to.
I mean, we already have like we've had laws like that recently, right? It was very, very common to arrest people for cross-dressing up until Stonewall, and it's become slowly less common since then. And that was like what, like a few decades ago?
Yeah, like the 70s. A few decades is a long time.
It's not a lot in legal precedent. There's like hundreds of years of legal precedent.
I don't understand how that's relevant.
Because we're talking about legal precedent.
No, I'm asking like why.
I'm saying it's not crazy to say that like that there is a bill that's banning this when there is a bill that was banning it not that long ago.
this is my understanding when it comes to like cross dressing stuff, and I was trying to look this up while we were talking, but I haven't clicked on a bunch of links. But I don't think that there's any kind of
I also I
I
just
don't
like
think
so
that
what's the relevance of like current obscenity laws, right? This has like a much broader definition than current
well,
obscenity
I would
laws.
think well I would when it comes to like what is the point of them? I think it's fucking stupid, obviously, right? I
No,
don't think that it's
no, I'm not asking what's the point of the laws. What I'm asking is what's the point of bringing them up, right? What's the point of bringing up what the current laws are on obscenity when the standards of this law are much broader than the current ones, right? I
because
just
there's a
looked up.
culture war on like drag queen story hour and
So
drag shows being
I
at like city halls and
okay.
shit.
I'm gonna make the question like really, really clear. When we're talking about what you brought up obscenity, current obscenity laws, right? You were talking about current obscenity laws. Would they arrest somebody for not showing their nipples but like just wearing lingerie in public? It looks like in Tennessee, no, they wouldn't. Because the specific definition says that they have to have a less than fully opaque covering of the areola. Um, so if you could see if you can't see the areola, then no, it's not illegal. I just don't see how this is relevant to determining what the definition of prurient interest is, given that prurient interest isn't even used. It's not even mentioned in current laws about obscenity for non-performers.
You're asking me what the point of them adding that in
No,
there
I'm
is?
asking what the point of you asking me what the current standard is for.
The point of me, okay, sorry. The point of me asking you is because I don't think that it's constitutional to ban cross-dressing because of the the
Wait, so what does that have to do?
expanding
What
because
what is you bringing up the current standards on cis people have to do whether or on cis people wearing lingerie for the gender that they're assigned at birth? What does that have to do with
because
whether it's
if we
constitutional for cis people to ban cross dressing?
because they're defining uh, drag people or the adult cabaret performers as impersonators. So they would assume that like what we would think of as cis, someone that is born as like the gender and sex, they don't think that that exists, right? So they're just going to see them as male or female impersonators. So cis and trans people under this would be policed on it, right?
Okay. Yes. Why then is the precedent on public indecency, not this law? You brought up an entirely different law on public indecency. Why is the law on public indecency relevant to this?
Because we have multiple laws right here about public indecency and
So there
performance in public
there are
and
multiple laws. I want to know why that's relevant to the interpretation of this law.
I'm trying to okay, take two steps back.
Okay.
Is the law the justice.gov site that you sent me, is this one talking about some kind of obscenity law that is hashing out the definition of prurient interest?
Yes. The
Okay.
one that you were referencing about whether you could go in public nude, that has nothing to do with the current standard, like the current laws on like public indecency, right? The current laws on public indecency never reference prurient interest. The current laws on like
What
whether
laws do?
what laws do. The laws on
Just this one or
banning of hardcore pornography in public. Um, I don't know. I can like look up every law in Tennessee that
okay.
has
I'm
a
just trying to
reference
like
prurient interest, or every law
sure.
in the
I'm just
whole
trying to
United
like
States.
find the connection between everything that you're saying. All right. Because I'm not like I'm starting to understand now. So this one is about hardcore pornography in public, right? And you referenced the you know what you see it because of that. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. In in order for us to you know it when you see it, there has to be some kind of prurient interest.
Yeah, it's one of the three qualifications of the Roth test.
Okay. Let me see this Roth test. I'm trying to
So
see if there's any way that there would someone could be arrested based off of the Roth test.
So the
for
Roth
walking down the street.
test isn't going to apply to here, right? Because that's going to be talking about multiple things. One aspect of the Roth test is going to be prurient interest. This law is an entirely different law. It doesn't have the other two standards that the Roth test does. You can, again, argue that this law is unconstitutional. That's fine. You can argue it's unconstitutional to ban cross-dressing. You can argue that it's unconstitutional to ban trans people from public. That doesn't change that the law, as it's written, does that, right? You can say that the law should get repealed based on the Constitution, but not that it isn't implementing those things that you consider unconstitutional.
Okay, so let's throw out everything that we agree on. It's a stupid law, that it's probably unconstitutional, and that it would almost certainly like not get acted upon in public, right? Can we agree on that?
I don't think so. I think that there's at least one cop who wants to arrest who will get mad enough to try and arrest at least one trans person, if they're aware of the law. I think that like at least one time this will happen in Tennessee.
I
don't know. I don't see how it's relevant though from like what the law actually says.
Okay, because I was just trying to get to the point where we could like throw out all the parts of the argument that we agree on, because I think that's where I was getting confused.
So
I'm going in circles for a second.
Well, yeah, no,
because
you kept referencing like I don't think it's constitutional to ban cross-dressing. That's irrelevant, right? The fact that there is a law banning cross-dressing.
It's irrelevant in your view. Okay.
So we can agree. We can throw out all the things that are irrelevant to this argument. How about that? We can say that it's irrelevant whether the law will be enforced. It's irrelevant whether the law is constitutional. There was a third one you had, right?
That it's stupid. It's probably
yeah, it's bad.
And that, yeah, it's not okay. I think that this is the major disagreement, that I don't know if we can come to a consensus, because neither of us can agree on what the legal terminology of this word here is. But entertainment, it feels like when I'm reading this, right, both the spirit and the letter of the law seems to imply some kind of performance for entertainment that is, this would imply in layman's terms, because I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to be able to like parse out a perfect legal definition here. But it seems like what they're outlawing here is the act of some sort of show.
So, presumably this law is going to ban like if you were to like blast music, right? If you were to blast like sexy music, and you were to like even the law as is, right? Before we change it to the current law. Change it to the new law, but just taking the new law, right? Presumably, I assume we were both going to agree on this, right? If somebody goes out and they go in public and they're in lingerie and they strip, and they strip down just so they're not nude, so that it's not illegal on the basis of public indecency, but just so that it's clearly on the basis of like prurient interest, right? They strip down to like very lewd lingerie. And they do like a very, very sexy performance, right? Like they do a little dance and they have the music, right? Presumably you and I both agree that regardless of whether this person is paying, like being paid, right? Regardless of consideration, regardless of whether this person has a stage or they just like found a place in the street to do it. Regardless of all these things, that's going to be banned by the law, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what aspect, like what's the argument you could make for that doesn't apply to trans people?
Wait, hold on. A trans person can still do that. I'm sorry. What is your question here?
No, sorry. What's the argument for why
a trans person walking down the street?
What's the not what's the difference? What's the argument for why under this law that becomes illegal, or that not becomes, it's already illegal under the previous law, even with the new law, how that is illegal, that doesn't apply to trans people in public? What's the argument?
Because someone dancing in lingerie is different than someone walking down the street in street clothes.
So I understand that they're different. I want to know what
What the
argument you
difference
could
is?
make. I want to make no. I want to know what difference in argument you could make. Right? What argument you could make to a court that would make that illegal that wouldn't apply to trans people in public.
Because it involves the. Let me think about the very specific wording because I don't know how we're not connecting on this part right here. How
Is it the entertainment part? Because it.
yes, I thought that's what we were just talking about. The
So
entertainment part.
I wanted to make sure, right? So yeah, we can use any of the definitions of entertainment. I can send you the definitions of entertainment again if you want. What is going to apply to that situation that wouldn't apply to trans people in the definition of entertainment?
I don't think that any person in any jury would say that someone walking down the street was someone doing a performance or entertainment.
Okay. So what's the argument you could make to a jury that would apply to the first situation that would make them rule yes on the first situation that you couldn't make to a jury in the second situation?
Just trying to find a perfect wording because I don't understand.
I'm not asking you to like
Because
tell me the symmetry breaker, right? I'm asking you to make the argument.
Is that someone who is
I'm not asking you to tell me that. I'm
not.
not asking you to tell me the symmetry breaker. I'm asking you to make the argument. The argument that doesn't apply.
Who is performing for entertainment purposes is someone who is dancing or doing some sort of thing for people to view them in public, specifically, who is drawing eyes themselves with the intention of like entertaining people for some kind of amusing purpose or for some sort of for people to sit back and have a recreational time, right? Whereas someone walking down the street would not be trying to provide any kind of entertainment, would not be in any way entertaining outside of outside of just some random fucking person looking at them and like jerking off to them in their mind. Right.
So
in the same way
why
that
is
someone
that
walking down the street, let's say a stripper is walking down the street and she's right in front of her strip club. She's not in the establishment yet, right? But someone sees her and they know she's a stripper and they think she's really fucking hot, right? Why? What is the difference between someone outside of their strip club, not inside of the strip club? How is that not also covered under this?
Because they're not doing a stripping performance. But I mean, if you want to make the argument that that would be considered under it, then sure, right? You can just make the argument that the law is broad. That the law is so broad is that it even encompasses that. But the previous arguments you gave, right? The intent. I think it's pretty clear that the like regardless of whether or not performed for considerations, that should get rid of the intent. But even if we don't accept that argument, we can get down to like an argument that something could be made for the intent, right? So why is a trans person dressing in the clothes of the opposite gender?
Why is the person? Because they find it more comfortable. We could say
a trans person is dressing in the clothes of the opposite gender because they find the clothes more physically comfortable, or because they find it more comfortable to be perceived as the opposite gender, or as the gender they identify as.
Are you asking me like what I think that the average person would, or the average trans person would? Or are you asking me for a legal argument that could be put up in court?
So yeah, I'm asking for a legal argument because we're discussing what the legal interpretation of this is, right? Are you
legal
provided
interpretation? If someone is trans, their lawyer could say that they simply find that these clothes are more comfortable for them, that they think that they look cool because they are part of some sort of or they just have like some sort of aesthetic that they have that they walk around in. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're trying to draw eyes to themselves.
So they think it. So they think it looks cool. Do you think that they like that they wouldn't be wearing those clothes if they were blind? That they wouldn't be wearing clothes of the opposite gender if they were blind. They're not wearing the clothes because they think they look cool. They're wearing the clothes because they want other people to perceive them as another gender, right? This is what the whole transgender movement is about. This is what all of gender ideology is about.
You just like pulled a switcheroo on me where you asked me what the legal argument would be,
And then I made
a
a legal counter argument.
Changed it. What are we doing here? I'm sorry.
Arguing about a law. About whether a law, by the legal interpretation, by the current standards that are set, would be would apply to trans people. So we of course would need to make legal arguments as to why it would apply to trans people.
The true legal argument would be this: that there is no way under the First Amendment that the state can police what someone wears, whether or not they're doing it for gendered experiences or not, because especially in the past like 40 or 50 years, the way that our clothing has changed compared to the previous, like most of human history has become much more androgynous or much more gender neutral. If we were to use that kind of language,
so that's
someone who is walking around in fucking jeans and a t-shirt, like you were saying earlier, would be considered under this. All of a sudden, you're saying that now this is that people would find jeans and a t-shirt gendered.
So that's what's called I don't think it's technically a facial challenge to the law. It might be a facial challenge to Bill 9 or whatever. But
sure, can you explain to me facial
challenge, like on the face of it challenge. Like which basically it just means like you're challenging the bill, right? You're not saying that the bill means something else, but you're going back to what we were already talking about and saying it's unconstitutional. So we already agree that it's irrelevant whether it's unconstitutional, right? We're talking about what the bill is. If you want to argue it's unconstitutional, I agree. It probably is unconstitutional to ban trans people. But not that long ago, it wasn't. In very, very recent history, it wasn't. Up until Stonewall, it was very common to arrest people for cross-dressing, and up until very recently, the last like 2-3 decades, like really, really recently, almost as recently as like gay marriage, more recently in many cases than the Bush v. Gore ruling, right? These rulings are precedent. I agree that like it is unconstitutional, but there are absolutely ways the current Supreme Court, the current billionaire-backed Supreme Court, that's already expressed an unwillingness to express judicial restraint, even before the current makeup in rulings like Citizens United, and after the makeup has been more than willing to overturn precedent and overdo judicial restraint in the recent rulings it's made. These are like reasons why like the constitutionality might not be relevant and why it's dangerous to press unconstitutional bills under the current precedent. But we already agree that the bill is bad and that it's irrelevant whether it's unconstitutional. The actual text of the bill, what's at discussion here, is that it should ban trans people, whether the First Amendment says it or not.
Except for the entertainment aspect. But I don't understand we're still. This is okay. I'm trying to be super. I'm trying to connect. Why you think that there would ever be a legal argument that someone walking down the street would be considered entertainment?
Okay, so entertainment, according.
Can you give me any kind of any case law where someone who was walking down the street was considered an entertainer that wasn't doing something for the purpose of entertaining?
Case law? I don't understand why case law is relevant. We can get into
because it moves into precedent, because that matters.
Okay, we're
talking about what is entertainment?
I don't know. Do you have any precedent of the other way, that somebody going down the street wasn't considered entertainment? Otherwise,
every single day, people walking down the street weren't arrested.
That's not case law.
I'm sorry, you can't.
That's not case law.
Yeah, I'm asking you for an example of someone getting arrested for doing some sort of entertaining action
No, because
that,
normally there's more qualifications than that, right?
say it's a taxable action. Say they're doing some sort of performance out in public where they're dancing, right? Or maybe they're
Yeah, yeah. Normally, the
or no, the
qualification is that it
dancing
has
would
to be a
be, hold on.
taxable activity. In this case, right? It says regardless of whether that's being performed for consideration, so it doesn't
But
have
it
to
has
be
to
a
be a
taxable
taxable
activity.
activity, and walking down the street isn't a taxable activity.
Nor is any performance where you're not receiving considerations.
Any activity where you're not receiving considerations.
Yeah,
So
yes.
this criminalizes any any person walking down the street who is trans or a stripper or a go-go dancer.
So there is going to be a question here of whether male and female, male or female impersonators who provide entertainment that appeals to a prurient interest. Whether that in the who provide entertainment that appeals to a prurient interest, it seems unclear on the law whether that applies to the things prior to male or female impersonators, or if that's qualifications around male or female impersonators, considering that that none of that was in the last law. But yes, either it's banning trans people in just that situation, or just any stripper who's performing in public and appeals to a prurient interest, who's like attractive in public. I think it's more likely that it's the latter, but I do think it's unclear given that there's like not a comma and we have the Oxford comma dilemma.
I would be willing to uh, concede everything and say that it's just an unconstitutional bill that's probably never going to be enforced.
Okay.
If there was some sort of legal expert or some sort of lawyer that could come up here and explain to us that entertainment could mean someone walking down the street, but I can't accept the idea that someone walking down the street could ever be considered entertainment.
I I mean,
Because it seems like entertainment can mean literally anything, and at that point it doesn't have a definition, and in that case it wouldn't be defined inside of the law.
I mean, I don't know. I'll concede the whole thing if you find like a legal expert who can definitively say that and
Well,
that
if
somebody
anybody in
walking
chat
in public.
knows a streamer who is a lawyer or anything like that, and you could message them and
Yeah. I don't know the this like
because that's a pretty important part is the entertainment and performance aspect of it.
I agree. The performance part, though, that's already established. This is already in contract law, right? And performance means a lot of things other than just like an entertainment performance, right? And the definition of entertainment is incredibly broad. If we talk about like somebody walking down a runway, right? That's gonna be entertainment, clearly, right? Is the difference just that they're elevated,
Say
that the
that
fact that
which
they're on a
part was it?
stage?
Wait, repeat that last sentence. I
Somebody who's
couldn't
walking
hear you.
down somebody who's walking down a runway is clearly going to be like providing entertainment, right?
Someone walking down a runway, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so the difference there is what, that they're elevated.
That they're not on the street. They're specifically going down a runway
So
where
what if,
there are people viewing them for the purpose of
yeah,
looking at them.
so what if there's like a fashion show on the street, right? They're not up on a stage, but there's like people are like walking down the street as if
I
it were a
agree. This
runway.
this law would definitely criminalize a fashion show out on the street.
So now
But someone walking down the street,
So now, right? Now let's just say there are some people sitting in chairs, right? Just some people sitting at their front lawn. That's the full audience, right? And you do a fashion show for them. You go behind a curtain really quick and you change a few times and you just walk down the street.
in that, yes, you're walking with the to entertain these people.
Yeah. So now imagine that that somebody like walks behind those people, right? And all of a sudden they're part of the performance. That would certainly make them part of the performance, right? If they're walking by.
No,
Why not?
if I'm in Central Park in New York City and there's some people doing some sort of street performance and I happen to walk by, that doesn't mean that I'm part of the performance.
I understand that's your position. I'm asking why is that your position? I need like a reason, not just like you stating a position.
Because you're not involved with those people whatsoever.
You
There has
you
it,
are right. You are involved proximity wise, right? You are there in proximity.
this
You
is
are in the
fucking
visual.
retarded.
You
I'm
are
sorry.
there.
If
You
you're
are there
going to
for the
make the
show.
argument that people that are walking through Central Park on their way to fucking work and they happen to be proximate, at that point, you can just say that because they're proximally like on Earth with someone that happens to be fucking
Hold on.
dancing on the street.
There were more to that, right? You don't have to just be in proximity. You also have to be part of within the visuals of the audience. This is probably pretty important.
How far within visual contact of the audience?
I don't know,
What if you're a mile away?
enough to provide entertainment.
Enough to provide entertainment.
Yes. That's what the law says.
This is the most unreasonable fucking reading of a law I've ever fucking heard in my entire life. That someone walking like through a park that happens to be nearby a separate performance where they don't know anyone in the performance, they're not engaging with the performance in any
You're walking
like
through
way
the performance. You're doing what all the other performers are doing. You're clearly providing entertainment.
If there's some people that are acting out a play and I happen to walk through the play because I didn't see them, just like Shakespeare in the park, not on a stage, am I part of that performance?
Yeah, of course you're part of the play. It wouldn't make sense to say that you want to be part of the play, that you were an intentional part of the play. It wouldn't make sense for you to be paid. In fact, you might be ruining the play by being there. But you can't ruin the play unless you're part of it, right? Unless you're doing an action that takes place in it. Unless you're performing in that like simple doing an action, an action which affects the entertainment of the show. If you're walking through the play, of course you're part of the play.
How far out does it have to be visual? What if you're
I don't know. It probably has to be like one of the senses enough to provide entertainment of a prurient interest. Or in the case of just entertainment, we don't have to necessarily have a prurient interest. If you're like there in the background releasing smells, right? If you're there releasing perfume for the different like they used to have scented shows in theaters, right? If you're doing that, that's probably part of like providing entertainment for somebody.
I don't think that you believe this. I don't think that you think that someone who's spraying Axe on themselves downwind of a play is part of that performance.
I
don't think that you honestly believe that.
I think it's pretty clear that they are participating in the performance, whether they want to or not.
Yeah, you're like incredibly fucking dishonest if you're saying that.
I mean, you can say I'm dishonest. You haven't like given any reason why that's not the case, though.
There's no engagement with the performance. There is.
You just engage with the performance.
What does it mean to engage with something?
To participate in it.
So, in order to participate, if you're
engage means we can do law. Oh no. Engage in law means to pledge or enter into a contract to do something. So that's like a contract to engage prior to.
Okay.
So the definition.
Find any word that has a definition that would make someone who is spraying Axe on themselves nearby a
Oxford to participate or become involved in.
Do you think that anybody who is viewing the performance would consider a smell that they don't even know because they can't see, nor can they hear, nor can they locate someone who is spraying Axe? Do you think that that person would consider the smell part of the play?
Yeah, I absolutely do think that if somebody is sitting there like, oh man, that show was really, it was like way less entertaining because I was like wildly distracted by the Axe body spray, right? The Axe body spray was like
No,
a
that would be
disgusting smell.
distracting from the performance. If something distracts from a performance, that is explicitly something outside of the performance. That
That
is,
is, you just said it's explicitly something that you're baking that in, right? But if there's something in the performance that's distracting, you would never hold this standard, right? If you have something like, if you have a,
how can something within a performance distract from the performance?
that this happens all the time, right? You can have we talk about like distracting editing all the time, right? This is like distracting.
That's part of the performance.
Yeah, I didn't say it was distracting from the performance, but it's a distracting in the performance. I never used the words distracting from the performance. I said that I was distracted in the example. In the same way you'd say I was distracted by the editing, I would say that show wasn't very good because I was distracted by the Axe body spray the whole time.
Okay. Editing that is distracting you from what the authors intended, right, is still part of the performance of the show that you're watching. Because
I
it
agree,
is,
as is the Axe, like I said the first time.
yeah, I'm trying to explain what the difference between something inside of a performance and outside of a performance is.
Okay, if you
So
can, if
if
we can
someone,
actually ground this out, that'd be great because we've been trying to do that and you haven't been doing that. Are you there?
I'm just waiting to like have I, I I I don't know how I could possibly move you on a or get you to agree that because the definition of performance that you're giving me means that anything within proximity, nebulous proximity, any kind of thing that could be um,
The
any action or any object or any event that happens within proximity of a performance is necessarily part of that performance.
Okay.
If there's a play going on and there's a fucking gang war
What
that
do you
breaks
think
out
it means to
a
be
street
part of a
away,
performance? What do you think it means to be part of a performance?
I think that in order to be part of a performance, there has to be some sort of um, some sort of intent for the performance. So the intent of the performance would be I'm going to do X, Y, or Z action. Anyone that is as participating in that performance, right? So if there are multiple actors in a play, if there are, um, if it's like a street performer who is um, letting other people pose them, right? You're interacting with that performance. You are now becoming part of the performance because you are directly inserting yourself inside of the intended performance, right? But I don't think that you can be inserted into a performance against your will and be held liable for that.
Okay. So intent, I'm going to do X, Y, or Z action. The person is intending to put on Axe body spray. They're intending to walk
No,
down the street.
they're intending to put on the Axe body spray. They're not intending to be a part of whatever fucking Shakespeare in the
Hold
Park
on.
play there is.
We have to go one step at a time, right? You gave a couple different standards. I want to get through all of them, right? So
Sure.
they're intending to walk down the street or they're intending to put on the Axe body spray. Anyone who's participating or interacting, what if they intend to put on the Axe body spray because they know it's gonna like mess up the show? Are they now part of the show?
I think that's a performance outside of the. They would be performing, but they wouldn't be performing inside of that show. They would be performing their own
They're
show
performing a
outside of
separate
that show.
show that's like ruining the other show. It's like
Yes.
okay. Um, so then if I'm intending to walk behind the entertainers, right? If I'm intending to be within their sight by walking by, then I'm intending to be part of, or I'm intending to be part of my own show. I'm not part of their show. I'm part of a different show in this case. But I am still doing like an entertainment. an action of entertaining.
Can you say that? So the act of walking through and intentionally interrupting a play.
No.
Yes. That
So back to the original example, right? Because we when you said the spray with the Axe body spray, right? Now you're walking behind, and you intend entirely to walk behind the performance, and you intend to be in the sight of those people. Is that enough intent to be to be maybe not part of that performance? You're part of your own performance because you didn't, for whatever reason, you say that there's like two separate performances going on. I don't think it's like legally relevant if there's two separate performances going on, but they're part of a performance, correct?
I think to intend to do a performance. I don't think that the simple act of being is a performance.
Um, I okay. I don't know what you mean by like the simple act of being. I agree
The
that.
simple act of being, by walking down the street, you are not providing any kind of performance for people unless you're trying to specifically draw attention to yourself for
So
the purposes of entertainment.
So again, any trans person who's wearing clothes of the other gender, you can deny this, right? But it's gonna be clear, it's gonna be obvious. Everybody knows that when you wear clothes for the opposite gender or for the gender you identify as, this is to like signal to people, to like give them to draw attention to the fact that you are trying to present as a woman, to try and draw attention to femininity in yourself. Yes.
I think that there is a crucial difference between draw attention to yourself in a performance manner and in a, or if you're trying to draw attention to a specific is that what you're asking, like a specific aspect of one person?
Uh, I'm just saying that you're drawing attention to yourself by virtue of wearing like women's clothing, and that you are intending to do so, or of wearing men's clothing, whatever gender you identify as, or
Even
in
by
whatever.
even if we were to accept that, you said earlier that you think that a trans person walking down the street in jeans and a t-shirt.
Yeah, so long as they were like obviously of the opposite gender, right? If it's jeans and a t-shirt, and you're like you're like a trans man and you're wearing um like a skateboard and or like skater clothing, right? Or if you're like a trans woman and you're wearing like ripped jeans and you're wearing like a crop top or like a V-neck t-shirt or something like that, right? Either way, these are going to be like clearly like cross-dressing clothing, right? If you just mean that like no, it doesn't technically
I
ban
don't.
people from like being trans in public because you can identify as the other gender and just like not dress as the other gender, then sure, I agree. But you're like you're like functionally forcing trans people into the closet at that point, right? You're like you're not allowing them to present as the gender they identify as. You're like at best allowing them to present as like androgynous, the sex they were assigned at birth.
I if there is a if there's a precedent for someone wearing clothes being considered a performance where they are not.
There is, it's drag.
Hold on. Oh, yeah, drag, like a drag show, like the for the purposes of entertainment, right?
Yeah, there are like drag brunches, right? Where like they like it's not necessarily the case that the entertainment, or sometimes like after a drag show they'll have the drag people walk around, right? It's not necessarily the case that their entertainment at this point is to like go and like put on a show and dance to it or whatever. Their entertainment is to go walk around and interact with the world in drag. To go
I
like
think
walk
that
around and talk to people
I
in
think that
drag.
under this law, you could make the argument that during the show, it could be it could be criminalized, and I would agree. I think that someone.
So what qualifies as like during the show, right? Like I just said, after the show. After the show, they're doing the
Right, I
entertaining
know. That's
performance
what
of
I'm
going
trying
and
to.
interacting with people. people.
Right. I was agreeing with you on the first part, but I don't think that there would ever be a situation where someone who's simply wearing clothes that might be too feminine for that person, wearing clothes that are too masculine for that person, would ever be arrested under the wording of this law.
So again, if you're
Because
saying that there will
otherwise,
be
we would have
arrested,
to make the argument that anybody who is walking down the street would be under your legal definition of performance, performing for everybody else in public.
yes, because the legal definition of performance has nothing to do with like entertainment, right? The legal definition of performance is just to perform an action. We're talking about like the contract law definition, right? You can do a performance by
It
moving money
explicitly says
around
a
by
performance in a location.
yes, so
It
you have to
explicitly says
be doing an action in a location, right? The contract law definition of performance is any action. So like a performance in contract law could the standard definition is like painting a house, right? That's like the standard example used if you look up the like examples of legal
under
definition of performance.
contract law.
Yes, this is referencing contract law. That's why it said the performed for consideration, right? Consideration is also a contract law term. We have a number of things. The laws for prostitution.
Listen, we're never going to connect on this. In order for us to ever find anything that we can connect on, we're going to need someone that could come in here and has gone through law school.
Okay.
Because
the laws for prostitution also use contract law terms, right? The laws for prostitution will use words like business. We can look at the Tennessee laws in particular. The terms
but
here.
We're not talking about prostitution right now.
I'm saying that it's not. It is normal precedent, right, to use contract law to use contract law terms in criminal law when regulating what type of business is allowed. This is standard practice. One example of such is like prostitution. I don't know if you don't want to if you want to like
because in order
hold
to
off until we can have like somebody legal mediate this, we can talk later.
That might need to be the case because again, like in order for me to buy into what you're saying, like I would have to accept that someone who sprays body spray on themselves downwind of a fucking play would be considered part of that performance.
You agreed. You agreed that they would be part of a separate performance, right? They would be doing like a separate entertainment performance.
Hold on.
You did agree to that earlier. You can walk it back now, but that was the original take.
I'm nearly certain, and people can clip it and ship it and all of that shit. But I'm pretty sure that what I said was, I think that if the intention was to like create a disruption in another performance, you're doing a performance. But the simple act of putting on fucking body spray or Axe or whatever the fuck downwind, is not in and of itself insert yourself into that production or that performance, nor does it like create a performance yourself.
What you said specifically was if you intended what I asked was if you intended the audience to smell it, right? And you agreed that if you intended the audience to smell it, that's a separate performance, that you are doing a separate performance. If you're putting on the body spray, then of course you're expecting the audience. You want a certain group of people to smell it. If the people that you're going to be around is the audience, then of course you want the audience to smell it.
Hold on. To be clear, I said downwind. I didn't say as a part of the audience.
Sorry, if you're
because you said anyone. The reason I said because to be ultra clear, the reason I said that was because you said that if you are within visual range of a performance and you're walking by, you're part of that performance.
Within visual range enough to be entertaining, yes.
Which is undefined by your own admission.
I don't think it's undefined. I think it's defined as a semantic primitive. You don't agree with that. You think that the circular definition is redundant, not a semantic primitive. That it's irreducible. That it's defined as basically that the only way we can define it is with our intuitions. It's the idea that there are like certain words in language, and I think this is like
I don't mean like literally like linguistically undefined. I mean like spatially undefined. We do not have like a measurement or some sort of like standard by which we would say that you are part of the performance. That is undefined.
I agree that there's not good legal precedent on it. Yes.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna need a fucking lawyer because I can't buy into this because it is just I don't think any reasonable person uh looking at this would ever agree with any of the fucking things that you said regarding performance.
Okay. Yeah, well, we can talk later then. Thanks for having
Do
me
you
on.
know someone like? Cause I'm totally fine with that. And again, I'll eat
Um,
all my fucking words. But
if
we can message Pisco. We can.
we can, yeah, we can find lawyers. Yeah. Well, I'll call in some other time, and we can bring all the lawyers we found and have them hashed out. Okay.
You said that you were available after 8 p.m. EST.
Maybe not at this point. I have a roommate who also does debates, who
Okay,
needs
I
to get on
understand.
soon. So
Yeah, I was gonna shoot messages around and see if anyone wanted to come on after the time that you said that you were available. But um,
yeah.
shoot me a message if you are free because it would be interesting to hash this out later today because I don't know what when the next time I'd be able to like schedule something out is. So
Okay. Yeah. I'll message you soon, or let me know if you find someone.
yeah, absolutely. All right, bye.
Thanks for having me on. Bye.